Hi. In this podcast, I hope to motivate the reasoning behind why we end up making the bad choices we do, what can be done about it, and why it's such a counterintuitive solution and so difficult to quantify. I can usually attest that it's the simplest explanation that's true. I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast, and please feel free to drop us a message. Thanks again. So I gave everybody a piece of paper. You all got it? Okay, cool. You won't need books unless you're going to write or take notes or anything like that. All right, so what is written on that piece of paper is what is called a koan. A koan is a meditation. The meditation comes out of a book called The Gateless Barrier. This is just one version of that book. If I'm not mistaken, this one has got a lot more added stuff in. Somebody has looked at the meditation and added a whole lot more to it. I'm more interested in the meditation. It's number 19. There are, how many? Anybody who's interested, there are 48. There are 48 meditations in the book. Anybody who's interested in meditating, I would recommend having a look at koans. They're very interesting. This author, I'll give you the book afterwards. You can have a look at it.
How do you spell koan?
Go goo. This one is called Passing Through the Gateless Barrier. But if you can get it online for free. Either the Gateless Barrier or the Pathless Path, which is quite significant. So if we read it quickly, I'll read it and you can just follow. When Zhaozu asked Nan Quan, Zhaozu was the student and Nan Quan was the master, "What is the way?" Nan Quan said, "The ordinary mind is the way." Zhaozu said, "Can one strive for it or not?" Nan Quan said, "When you strive for it, it recedes." Zhaozu said, "If we do not try, how do we know it is the way?" Nan Quan said, "The way is not something known or not known. Knowing is false perception. Not knowing is just being oblivious. If you truly arrive at the way that is free from doubt, you would realize that it is like a vast open space, through and through. How is it possible to impose affirmation or denial?" At these words, Zhaozu was suddenly awakened. Now, I don't specifically want to go into meditation, and I don't specifically want to talk about koans, but I think that the message that they're trying to convey there is very interesting. So I'd just like to expand on that a little bit. I've looked at a lot of these things, and I found them absolutely fascinating because the idea is to try and understand what is being said. I think this one is perhaps one of the more simple ones. If you do understand what is being said, it's pretty explanatory. He's talking about the ordinary mind, just ordinary things, plain, simple, uncomplicated, which is what the object of meditation is. When I talk about clarity of perception, clarity of vision, those kind of things, that's what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about ordinary life, because we get so lost and so taken away by the ruminations of our minds. You know, the way things just churn over and over and over and over and over again. So there was an experiment done by two guys. I can't pronounce the first guy's name. It's Hafele and Keating. I don't know who Hafele is. I've never heard of him, and Keating is quite a common surname. But what the experiment that they did is they wanted to see that if a clock, a stationary clock, rotates at the same pace as a clock that is moving. So it's a time measurement experiment. So what they did is they used these, I think the battery that they used is the Cesium battery on like atomic clock time, very, very accurate clocks that measure time down to nanoseconds. And they had their base station with their test clock, and they put the other one in an aeroplane. And they tested it in both directions. So going clockwise around the Earth and going anti-clockwise around the Earth. And the clocks slowed down at different speeds depending in which direction the aeroplane went. So in essence, what they were proving with this time is that when you are in motion, time slows down. But we're talking nanoseconds. We're not talking like major time. But that's what the experiment wanted to prove, which it did. And apparently, this experiment has been repeated many, many times. So one of the first things that crossed my mind, and it's always something that crosses my mind, is we're so used to time. We all, many people have watches. We think that we know what time is and what time is about, but there's so much just about the measurement of time that we don't know. And that if we don't put in the effort to try and find out about these things, we will never know. A different measurement of time is the time loss that takes place between, again, a clock on Earth and a clock in a satellite orbiting the Earth, and the effect that gravity has on time under those circumstances. So how they started figuring this out, I mean, we all use GPSs. But where you are in relation to where you are on Earth as opposed to where the satellite is different because of the gravity. And the satellite is moving faster than the Earth is spinning as well. I don't know if anybody's ever stood at night and looked up in the sky and seen satellites. They move. They really, they fly past. They go by very, very quickly. You can see them with your naked eye if you've never had the opportunity. I've seen a few. It's very, very interesting. You see the space station flying past. It's quite something. So there's two different things that have an impact on our perception of time and how time works. Now, for somebody who navigates, for anybody who navigates, if you want to go for a random example, somewhere in Botswana, and they give you the GPS coordinates, they give it to you in hours, minutes, and seconds. For those of you who had geography at school, it's the one tick at the top and the two tick at the top, and it's a measurement of space. We use hours, minutes, and seconds to measure where we are on a map. So time is a measurement. Now, the connection that I'm trying to make here with this thing this koan that we read at the start is this is what our minds are continually doing. We're continually measuring everything. Where we are, how far we're in relation to what is going on around us. If I look at myself, measure up to what it is that I am seeing. We are constantly engaged in this process. And if you're an addict of the variety that I'm in, you're usually measuring up in the minus. You're usually coming up short in the equation. I'm not where I'm supposed to be now, and I'm not measuring up to what it is that I'm seeing. Or what I'm seeing is far beneath me. and I should not be here because this is far below me. So in either one of those senses, we're constantly looking at and evaluating our place in space. And I don't mean space, I'm talking about where we are sitting in these chairs, and in time. Why should I be here? I should be somewhere else. I can't imagine that I have to sit here for the next however long doing whatever, and why is it that I ended up here? These are all questions that are constantly going through our minds. Constant process of evaluation. There was a lady, not a lady, sorry, there's a podcast program on a podcast channel called Radio Lab. And what they did was they did experiments with 9-volt batteries. Everybody knows these little 9-volt batteries. They don't have much electricity. I mean, they can't shock you. They'll sting your tongue a little bit. And what they did with these 9-volt batteries is they connected them up to sensors put on people's brains. Now, the initial experiment started with at a sniper training school, where they wanted to see if they could take somebody and teach them to shoot accurately in a very short period of time. And people who put this contraption on, with a 9-volt battery on, were able to learn the skills necessary to shoot accurately very quickly, much quicker than people who did not have these things on them. They've also discovered that using a 9-volt battery and these little sensors that they put on people's head, that they can mess with people's perception of time. That they can influence how much time you think you are taking busy doing something. So then the question comes up is how much of how we evaluate time is just a function of our brain? How much of it is real as opposed to what we've learned and what we think? Is time a thing? Something that needs to be measured, or is it only us as humans that measure time? Do the rest of the mammals and life on Earth measure time, or is it only us that is concerned with time? Now there was a lady who had a brain tumor. Her name was Diane van Buren. She had a brain tumor. And as part of the surgery and of the tumor and all of that kind of stuff, she lost the ability to quantify time accurately. It messed with her perception of time. And something interesting happened before and after the surgery. After the surgery, she became an ultra-marathon runner. So ultra-marathons are 100 miles. 100 miles marathon. I would never in 10 million years ever consider doing something like that. But she ran many of these things. She did something called the Yukon Ultra, which is to drag a 20 kg sled for 700 kilometers through the snow in the Yukon. Now, a number of years ago, I went and hiked the Fish River Canyon. I've done a lot of hiking in my life, and what they recommend is that I'm going to say what I remember, I don't know if it's 100% accurate, is that men should carry a quarter of their body weight and women should carry a fifth of their body weight. Now, I carried a bag, I don't think I was 100 then, I was about 90. And I carried about 25 kgs in my backpack and went and hiked the Fish River Canyon. It was 5 days, 18 to 20 kilometers, sometimes 22, 23 kilometers a day in soft sand, riverbanks, bouldering, small rocks. The toughest hike that I've ever done. You go into the canyon and you don't come out of the canyon until you come out on the other end. And lugging that 20 kgs through that canyon for 5 days, and I don't even think it was 100 kilometers. It was absolutely grueling. When you do go, you're supposed to go at the end of winter, because then there's no rains, because if you go during summer, there's the chances of flash flooding and you get washed away in the canyon. You have to take water filters with you and filter all the water that you drink, and it's quite an experience. You sleep on the sand. You don't need a sleeping bag or anything. If you take a soft foam rubber mat or even just a sheet, you can sleep on the sand. It was actually very nice. It's like being on the moon. But it was tremendously grueling. It was a very, very, very hard experience. So 20 kilograms on your back for 700 kilometers is hectic. That is no small feat. I don't know how long she took to complete the challenge, but she was the first woman to cross the line. Right? She was also the only woman to cross the line. Nobody else made it across the line. And she had only undertaken these kind of extreme challenges after the tumor and after kind of that loss of perception around time. Now everybody in this group knows who Tim Noakes is. Tim Noakes, very, very famous sports nutritionist in South Africa. I think he's a sports nutritionist. I don't actually even know what his proper. He's a nutritionist. I should have had a look. I can't remember. And 20 years ago, he said something that has apparently, when I was looking at all of this research, sparked off quite a controversy 20 years ago. And he was saying, and I'll read exactly what he said: the brain alone sets and enforces the seeming limits we encounter during prolonged exercise. So what Tim Noakes is saying is that it's all in your mind. All in your mind. I spoke in the last group, I spoke a little bit about VO2 max, how much oxygen you have in your system also depends on your performance, and anything over that level is purely pushing through on pure willpower and force of determination. Now please try not to fall asleep when I use this example, because every time I hear it, my eyes roll into the back of my head. But everybody's seen that marshmallow experiment with the little kids, right? The experiment is actually called the time preference theory and delayed gratification. Now, why I mention this is because part of the research around this stuff shows that people who think that they will run out of willpower fare less well than people who believe that they have limitless willpower. Now, there is no ways that anybody could convince me that standing in front of a mirror and going, yes, I can do it, is the way to build up your willpower. That comes from a completely different place, and that really, in essence, is what I'm talking about, or pointing at when I read this koan. Is it's an inside job. It works from the inside, not from the outside. Everybody knows the marshmallow experiment, right? With the little kids. I'm not gonna repeat it. But if we look at it from a different perspective, if I say to anybody in this room, you know what, I'll give you 1,000 rand now, or I'll give you 1,100 rand next year, this time. So next year, October, September. Next year, September, I'll give you 1,100 rand. There's an equation that takes place in our mind. We evaluate. Am I going to see this person again next year? Where's this person going to be? Is this person even going to have 1,000 rand 1,100 rand to borrow me? Are they trustworthy or are they not trustworthy? And when they did the marshmallow experiment, when part of they didn't just do the one experiment. Part of that experiment was that the person who was running the experiment did something that proved that he wasn't reliable. He didn't come with another marshmallow or something like that. And then the trust in the experiment went way down and everybody was eating their marshmallows. I can't tell you exactly what the percentages were there. But there was a definite change when the trust in that person went down. So there's again an evaluation process that takes place there. It's like an economics equation. How is this going to give me the $1,000 now? What's $100? Does 100 rand mean anything? Does 100 rand mean anything to me, or is it just 100 rand? I'd rather have the 1,000 rand now. It's a math equation. Percentages, playing the odds, weighing up. And maybe the sums are small. Maybe if it's 1 million rand and 100,000 rand, But again, the evaluation process will come into that. So it's about making an informed decision. Again, evaluating, calculating, looking at. Now, part of what this first reading was about is how will I be able to recognize if I'm mentally in the right place? If for me to practice finding that mental space is perhaps going about finding that right mental space, is perhaps the wrong way of going about finding that mental space. How will I know when I've achieved it, and how will I know what my objective and what my goal is going to be? Now, there's one thing that I've learned through doing meditation, and just out of interest, these guys are all practicing Zen meditation, Chan meditation, Zen meditation. I like Zen meditation. If I say that I practice any kind of Zen meditation, I would say I practice Zen meditation. And the main reason why I say that is because I like the way that it sounds. Very Zen. But it is. I do believe that it's a very good way of meditating. So, I got completely sidetracked with that. What they say in meditation is that if you are meditating for a specific outcome, so let's say I want to start meditating because I believe that meditating will help me with my anxiety. Therefore, I set up an evaluation procedure that if my anxiety is not being diminished, then what is the point of meditating? Then you are approaching meditation with the wrong mindset, because you are saying this is what the result of meditation is. You find out what the result of meditation is by doing the practice of meditation. Now, if you have to jump into a sailing boat in Cape Town, and we've got quite a few Cape Town people there. If you have to jump in a sailing boat in Cape Town and you want to go to New York City, you want to go to the harbor in New York City. If I had to do that, I do not know how to sail. I have some knowledge of how maps work. I have absolutely no idea of how maps work in the ocean and how I'm supposed to find my way around. I suppose if I had a GPS, I could do something. And if it was a sailing boat, I don't know how sails work and how to sail into the wind and all of that kind of stuff. So I would have to learn before I undertook a journey like that, or before I decided to do something like that. I would have to learn how to do it. So it's important to research and to understand and to try and figure out But also what they're saying is that if you are doing this for a specific outcome, you're approaching it with the wrong mindset. It's very much a case of, if you're going to enter into some kind of, and again, I don't want to focus on meditation because not everybody likes meditation or wants to do meditation or has a desire to do meditation. If you want to learn and understand spirituality, if you have an idea of what you think spirituality is and what it's about, then you're approaching the whole exercise from your perspective. And who's to say your perspective is right? You first take the journey and try and understand what it is that you need to do without looking at what you think the outcome should be. And trust the process. And see if there is anything to this. There's another theory called the B theory of time. And the B theory of time says that the past and the present and the future are all equally real. And that there are no tenses. That you could actually be anywhere on a sliding scale and it would be exactly the same. So it's not like the past is gone. The past is still there. We just happen to be here and unable to figure out how to move the slide rule in any direction. In fact, that time is tenseless. I don't even know why I'm telling you the story. Don't have anything to add to it. It's more along the lines of this is just stuff that I'm looking at and the stuff that I looked at in preparation for the discussion that we're having. Yeah, go.
Could it be possibly that while you physically can't go to the past, by being you can put your mind in the past, and that's how you can be in the past, but not physically?
Remember, what I believe the ultimate objective of the exercise is what is referred to as the ordinary mind. So just to be in ordinary life.
Sure.
Because what we have a tendency to do, and this is so, I've done this, is to absolutely overanalyze and see significance in everything. I get so lost in the interpretations and in the meanings of what is going on around me that it drives me crazy. So to the point of a car will drive past there. I don't do it anymore because I've managed to separate myself from that through the pursuit of the ordinary mind. Where a car would drive past there and it would sound like a V8, and I would think to myself, is that one of those Chevy SS Buckies? Those things are so cool. I want one of those things. So that would be like the journey and I'd be sitting here and God only knows what's happening out there in the street. Instead of just hearing sound, I would do the meditation class. I did meditation in the treatment center for about 2 or 3 years. I taught meditation. And we'd all be sitting here meditating and the birds would tweet outside the room there, and I'd be thinking to myself, they must sense this like deep spiritual, like Zen experience that we're all having here, and they come to say hello, which is absolutely rubbish because the birds are just tweeting outside the window. We assign significance to everything. So it's the pursuit of the ordinary mind. This is the significance, and these are the interpretations that we apply to these circumstances. Now, when we babies, we learn very easily. We learn languages very easily. We absorb everything very easily. Little children can learn perfect pitch, something that is very useful to musicians. They can learn multiple languages, absolute sponges. They say the first 3 years of the child's development, 2.5 years of the child's development are so important in learning everything. But for some reason, evolution has decided that that's not something that should be taken through into our adult lives, because we lose that ability to just absorb everything. And I can see a little bit of sense as to why that's a good idea. I mean, imagine everything just coming in your mind and being absorbed all the time. I mean, there's the possibility that you can just drive yourself nuts with all the information that is going in there. And I imagine, I'd like to think that over a process of time we learn to discern what is true and what is false. But I believe not very well, because we make a lot of assumptions and we make a lot of judgments. I mean, this is what I'm talking about in terms of all of these measurements. Measuring, evaluating, how do I know with something as simple as time, looking at my watch and watching the thing going around, how many different branches and avenues of time that there are and how things influence what differently from all the various aspects. So, as we get older, it becomes harder to learn and more difficult to learn evolutionarily. I hope that's a real word. But not impossible. Not impossible. There's a woman who's written a book called The Woman Who Changed Her Brain. It's a book by a lady called Barbara Arrowsmith Young, which is one of the most fun, in my top 10 books that I've ever read in my life. She had all the learning disabilities. She didn't have a learning disability, she had them all. And over a period of time, she trained herself. And the whole experiment was about brain elasticity. How to retrain your brain. Is it possible to train your brain? Because if I'm not mistaken, we're looking in a time period of perhaps not even 30 years ago, where they thought, if you are like that, you're done. Your brain is like that, there's nothing that you can do to change your mind. But it is possible. The brain has the ability to continuously learn and continuously grow and continuously change. The real hiccup there is that it becomes difficult to do, and that it can take a considerable amount of time and willpower and effort to actually do it. And then you need to be pursuing the changes in the correct direction. Because if you've got this whole evaluation process going on and it's clouded because you can't see the true from the false, and you're looking for your solution, how do you know what it is that you are going to find is real or not real? The proposition of what it is that I'm talking about, the ordinary mind. What I want to suggest and what I want to put forward is that if you are able to reach that space, which is difficult, which requires effort, because you have to stay out of and have to get out of that constant evaluation process, you give your brain an opportunity to heal itself. Through that process. Now, one of the reasons why I like the 12 steps so much, and when you read a lot of spiritual literature talks about atonement. It's a very religious word, but I think it describes aptly making right the wrongs. We have it in our steps as steps 8 and 9 and 10. We continue, and steps 4 and 5, we continue to look at ourselves and identify in situations where we are wrong and what we have done wrong. In essence, what we do is we take the other person out of the equation because we have no control over other people and what they are doing. And we get lost in the equation of trying to prove our innocence in circumstances. We take the other person out of the equation completely, and we look at our behavior and what it is that we've been doing. And my experience has been through the process of pursuing, and I believe you all understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the ordinary mind, because it's very easy to get confused about what it is that we're talking about, the pursuit of the ordinary mind. And that very, very, very important function of taking personal responsibility and holding ourselves personally accountable in all conflict situations, and seeing what our part in these things are, will take us to where we need to be. Will take us to higher levels of being able to take responsibility for our lives. Because I don't believe that we are able to take responsibility for our lives when we are holding other people accountable for the things that are happening to us. That's one of those things where you jump in your boat and you want to go to New York Harbor, but for some reason you're half a degree off in your calculations. Small little bit off in your calculation. Where are you going to end up? You're going to end up in Mexico, or you're going to end up in Alaska. And then you're not going to know where the hell you are, or how to get where you need to go, because you're off by half a degree. And then you've got to figure out where you are, which maybe you are able to do. Then you've got to still get to New York from where you are. And if all your calculations are still half a degree off, where the hell are you going to end up? It's such an important part of recovery and such an important part of life. These ideas are not new ideas. These ideas are not NA and AA ideas. These are ideas that are as old as the hills. You know, these things, these koans were written in the 13th century. Plato and Aristotle were talking about these things 5,000-6,000 years ago. These very same discussions that we're having now. Human nature. And I want to end with this. The strength of practice is that it enables us to recognize our objective more easily. There is so much to be said for taking that responsibility and doing the work and finding out and trying to understand and trying to grasp from a perspective of humility. I don't know what I am doing. Let me find out. I do not believe, and this is a big statement, right, that I'm making here. I do not believe that it is possible when I have conflict with people that I will be able to, on my own, identify my part 100%. I believe I will be able to identify at least 80 or 90% of what my part is. But I will still need to communicate with another human being to fully understand what has taken place. We learn through talking. Even me talking to somebody else and listening to what I'm saying is, I change my mind and I learn from from the things that I say. So when they say something like, practice makes perfect, true. And there's good reason for it.